It being half past, we will begin. In the matter of 2812 Eric Folcomer, 117 Bailey Road, we have a decision. We have a motion to move the decision.
You do it.
Go ahead.
I make a motion, we approve as it's written.
Do we have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That takes us down to the pending cases, the first one being 2814 Carol I. Lynn, 196 Hill Street.
Oh, wait, on GWB Southampton,
Yeah.
since we have something from the planning board, let's put that on the June agenda for decision.
You need a motion on that?
Yes.
I move that we put that on the agenda for June.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now back to Carol I. Lynn.
Okay, for the applicant Gilbert G. Flanagan, 21 South Main Street, Southampton. As you know, this was a holdover case that was heard in the first instance at your last meeting, and there were some suggestions and requests that we do some modifications to the plans for the addition, particularly having to do with the window wells that were proposed to the west and to the north of the addition. There was also mention made of a shed that mysteriously straddles the southwest corner of the property. So by a letter dated May 8th, I submitted some revised plans which showed the nature and extent of the window wells greatly reduced. Survey also shows the note the shed is to be removed. I think that was pretty much what you requested. We substantially reduced the window well on the west side of the property. In fact, we reduced its length by half, and we narrowed it to 4 feet, which is just about as much as you need to have safe access. So if you have any questions,
So it will now be 4 by 10?
yeah, approximately, right, as opposed to, I think
It was like 6 by much longer.
actually, it was nearly 30 feet, it's now down to 15, so we cut it in half. And the one on the north, I think we reduced the width of that by almost 1 foot too.
That's the one that's 4 by 10, I guess.
Yeah.
And the shed will be removed.
The shed will be removed, and there's a note on the survey. And as you know from the last hearing, there was a hot tub that was shown, which we took off even before the last meeting, so that's history.
You have any questions? Dan?
No, it's good.
Carol? Rick?
No questions?
Anybody out in the audience would like to be heard to this application? Therefore, hold it for decision.
Yes.
I have a motion to hold for decision.
I move that we hold up the decision.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Case number 2815, Harkonnen LLC and Atreides LLC, 408 First Neck Lane.
For the applicant, John Bennett, this is an application to add less than 50% to an pre-existing certificated guest house on the property. And it is a guest house, it's not a separate rentable unit. But I don't think I'm taking too many liberties with the proceedings of the last meeting to say that I don't think there were any issues whatsoever with the enlargement of the guest house. It's a fairly typical granted request as long as we're within the 50%. The issue became the ultimate disposition of the combined garage, apartment, and greenhouse that is shown on the lot. That also has a certificate of occupancy, but as we talked about, the parcel is currently pending subdivision, so the 3 acres on the front of fronting on First Neck Lane would be separated from the almost 6-acre parcel that fronts on Lake Agawam. I told the board that the planning board was willing to allow the greenhouse garage apartment to stay in the location that it currently exists, as long as ultimately these 2 lots were kept in the same control. But the board was concerned that this would leave the question of the greenhouse, garage, and apartment unresolved. So what we have proposed is to request that the variance be conditioned upon allowing the garage, greenhouse, and apartment to remain in its current location until such time as a CO is applied for the enlarged guest house. Thus, in order to obtain a CO for the guest house, we would have to demolish the garage, apartment, and greenhouse. That would also make the request for the net relief on the parcel almost just a few square feet, since we're doing away with about 400 odd square feet in the existing apartment.
You would have to take down the building?
In order to get a certificate of occupancy for the...
Just give up the apartment
Give up the apartment.
and leave the building? Is that the idea?
No, we take everything away. The garage, the apartment, and the greenhouse.
It all go?
Take it away. Because it creates problems with the,
lot line.
with the lot lines, yeah. And to relocate it, we'd need variance relief, and it's not worth maintaining any of it. So the thought would be, building permit would issue if the board was kind enough to grant the relief requested, but prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, we'd have to demolish the garage, apartment, and greenhouse. Seems fair.
Looks to me, I
No.
don't know, Rick has an issue with that.
Well, that's kind of what I was looking for at the last meeting.
That's what I figured. So, I didn't want to say. I
Makes
didn't
it a
want
lot
to.
easier.
Yeah, I didn't want to. Obviously, I had to check with the clients on that. So, but that'll work if it works for you guys.
No, good
Dan?
questions.
Jerry? Rick?
Nope.
Anybody out in the audience wish to be heard in this application? Hold for decision?
Hold that for decision.
Thanks.
That takes us down to the new cases, the first one being 2817 500 Old Town LLC, 500 Old Town Road.
Good evening, Ed Hollander, Edmund Hollander Design Landscape Architects for the applicant. I think this is from what I understand, it's a question of what is going to happen in the existing 100-foot setback from the wetlands, which is currently all basically a lawn area at present. There is the driveway is going to be relocated, and some of the existing plane trees that are on the site get moved. They've been moved, and basically, all we're proposing to do is to take what was a irrigated, fertilized lawn and transform it with, basically take that out and seed it into a fescue grass area that will not require irrigation or fertilizer after the growing period, to replace that as part of the new landscaping for the property.
They're torn the house down, right?
Yes. New house, new pool, new tennis court. All of that, well beyond the 150 foot, beyond the
When you
150.
refer to the wetlands, do you mean the wetlands that are across the street or the wetlands?
There's a wetlands that is across the street. And so all of our setbacks are from the wetlands that are on the west side of Old Town Road, and then this is on the east side of Old Town Road. And it's currently a developed lot with a lawn and a hedge, and
So you have the wetlands, but between the house and the wetlands, there's street.
there is the street.
Chick, you on this one?
Just minor stuff. This came in, they had done a stormwater pollution prevention plan because it was greater than an acre of disturbance. And when the SWIP came in, on the SWIP checklist, there's a place for determining if a wetlands permit is necessary. So I think probably, I mean, I know you didn't submit for that up front, but it was picked up through the SWIP review process. And it is within the jurisdiction or the setback area that the board typically looks at. So Ed, just, it's actually 125 feet, which I
Right.
think you have on
Yeah,
the-
we do have that
you
on
said
there, right,
100,
right.
so I just
Sorry.
want to
Yep.
clarify that for the record. Rick, there's no other activity that's within the jurisdiction area. Do we need an environmental assessment form, do you know? We typically get it when we have this type of application, but it wasn't submitted with this.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that would probably be considered the type 2 action.
I would think so. Okay, so we won't need that. And then all I was really looking for, Ed, was just two things. If you could provide any notes or additional detail on the restoration of the old driveway area. Has that in fact been done? You said the trees were relocated, but
The old driveway is gone.
the old driveway's been removed, it's
And
been
we'll,
covered over?
Covered over.
Right.
Yes,
Okay.
and there's a gravel surface for construction vehicles to get to the property. All the hay bales
Is
are
that in
up.
line with the new driveway
That's
location?
parallel to it.
Okay,
The new driveway's been cut, the London planes were relocated.
okay. So the temporary construction access will be removed and also revegetated after
Yeah.
this
Yes,
is
right.
complete?
It'll just be the native
right.
vegetation.
The 10 or 12 large plane trees were on that site. We dug them to save them and moved them, and we're going to use them as part of the new landscaping.
Sure, no, makes sense.
Yep.
Transplant them on site. And then some additional detail just in terms of the specific mix and density of vegetation, you know, the fescue mix.
Right.
You know, application, pounds, or whatever the rate will be, so that we can kind of monitor that, make sure there's no invasives.
Well, what we
There's a
could
lot
do, if you want, because I know we've done this with Marty Shea in the town, is we've actually used a fescue sod. And that way, we eliminate any chance of the invasives coming in.
Yes, and you've mentioned that to me
Right,
before, so
right.
that would be acceptable.
Okay.
As long as it's the correct mix.
Right.
So, I mean, that's about it. I have no other real comments. But I didn't have anything prepared for the night. Tonight is the first time we've seen it. So if you could, you know, just provide that information, we should be able to have it ready for work session if it's ready, and probably get it through the next meeting.
Okay. Yeah, we can get you that. It's a standard fescue sod. I think Delalio or Delay, one of those guys grows it up on the North Fork that we've used in other wetland things in the town. I'm not sure we've used it in the village, but I know we've done it with Marty in the town. And it's a good way to do it because it keeps all the invasives out.
Yes,
Right.
yep, no, I'm
Okay.
familiar with that.
Yeah.
It works well.
I do have a question on the driveway. There's a lot of driveway, and is there any runoff from the driveway contained on the property?
They'll all the grading and drainage will provide for catch basins to catch any water coming down before it leaves the property.
Okay, so yeah, so it won't get on to
No,
the
no,
whole town. huh?
no.
We usually do get drainage calculations. Actually, I'm looking at some notes, and we did pick that up as well. Do you have drainage calculations or anything?
I believe the drainage calculations are on
Survey
it.
would have that.
Yeah, I
Yeah, they're
didn't see them on.
No?
It wouldn't be on our drawing, but it might be on a,
We'll provide that. if it's not- if it's missing.
it might be on the Squires and Holden survey.
No, I just see lot coverage calculations.
All right.
I don't see
Right, so you can
drainage.
have Squires and Holden do
The
that.
drainage
Yeah,
calculations.
yep.
Okay. That's all I have.
You get to somebody EAF?
Yeah, we don't need it for this.
You don't?
We
Okay,
typically
great.
receive it. It was not submitted for this application, but there's
Correct.
nothing else that's within the
So what you need
jurisdiction.
is the drainage calculations,
Specificity on the
Fescue mix.
seed mix or
Right,
sod mix
right.
and drainage calcs.
Perfect.
Okay.
Sounds great.
Very good. Thank you.
Rick, anything else?
No?
Jerry?
No.
Dan?
No.
Anybody out in the audience would like to hear this application? Therefore, we're gonna hold this open.
I think we should hold it open, yeah.
Information?
If it comes in by the work session, we can still do a decision.
Okay.
I make a motion to hold over.
Wait a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We'll have it in, when do you need it?
On the application of case number 2818, SH Meadow Lane LLC, 715 Meadow Lane.
Evening to the applicant, Gilbert G. Flanagan, 21 South Main Street, Southampton. We also have Melissa Dedovich, Peconic Environmental, to give some backup on environmental issues, and also with Jack Robertson and Ed Siegel, the project architects. Before I start off, I have an affidavit of posting and an affidavit of mailing. This is a somewhat interesting application, and it involves as you see, two parts, a wetland special permit and also a rear yard variance to permit the replacement of the existing residence with a new residence and related improvements. Some of the things that are significant about this is that even though it's a new project, it will actually result in a reduction in lot coverage, and it will also result in we think, a significant increase in restored natural vegetation. The proposal is, however, to leave in place the existing swimming pool and some of its decking, but to eliminate a lot of other decking, including some decking and access that is closer to the rear line and to the wetlands than what we're proposing. The existing improvements, as I say, are within the wetlands jurisdiction, and I did ask for a rear yard variance if necessary. The survey is a little bit interesting as to where the rear yard is, so I took the worst case and showed it to the edge of the boat slip, which shows on the survey. I believe that the rear yard actually is probably further out, but we took the most restrictive possible interpretation. The other thing it's important to note is that it's no closer to the north property line than the existing house is. Now, perhaps the most telling and most useful drawing that we have throughout this presentation is a drawing that was done by the project architects, which shows the footprint of the proposed improvements in gray and the footprint of the existing improvements in red. And as you can see, when you look at it, there is actually a significant reduction in the amount of lot coverage. So one of the things that we are asking for is for a two-story residence where the existing building is a one-story residence. I will point out that the existing building is FEMA non-compliant based on its construction. The new building will be FEMA compliant, and as you can also imagine, the old sanitary system that services this property is located very close to the wetlands. It sits in groundwater, and the proposal would be to construct a new Suffolk County Health Department code-compliant sanitary system, which would be an additional wetland benefit. So I think it's important to see this drawing, which you have, by the way, you have multiple copies of this in your file, and it is color-coded. We also have submitted a landscape plan, which shows a considerable increase in the amount of natural vegetation. We're eliminating virtually all of the existing lawn. I would submit that this is also a rather unique application in that it also involves the property to the west, which, while it's in single and separate ownership and has been for some time from the subject property, it is controlled by the applicant. That lot currently enjoys a dock and a walkway and an entrance from the curb. Part of the proposal of this application would be to effectively sterilize this lot from any possible future development, and in fact to eliminate the walkway and the dock and the entrance and let this area naturally revegetate. So part of what we've done in our calculations is to show the reduction in lot coverage as it relates to this parcel as well. As I say, part of what we would be willing to agree to would be that lot would be forever sterilized, and that could be accomplished either by actually merging it in title with the subject property or imposing a conservation easement or some other kind of restriction on it. So we think that's a fairly significant aspect of this application. And when you look at the charts which we submitted, and there were a number of charts, you can see the calculation of existing lot coverage, existing and proposed gross floor area, and you can see that there is significant reduction in, say, in lot coverage, and there's a significant increase in natural vegetation. We think that from a wetland standpoint in particular, which this case is largely about, it meets the spirit and intent of the village wetlands regulations and also the regulations, I shouldn't say regulations, but the guidelines in the Meadowlay Overlay District outline. I tried to lay this out in some detail so I didn't have to talk too much tonight in a memo that I submitted.
Is that because your daughter's here watching?
By the way, if I make a fool out of myself, I apologize. So that's it. If this won't talk her out of being a lawyer, I don't know what will. But anyway, in any event, so as I can save my voice, if you look at the memo that I submitted dated May 12th, I tried to summarize the various salient points of this application, why we think it's really kind of a neat application, because it does provide quite a few environmental benefits. And it was broken down into 4 or 5 categories. The first being the net reduction in overall lot coverage of buildings and structures. The second being restoration of native vegetation. The third category being conformance with the Meadow Lane Overlay District guidelines, and the fourth being compliance with other regulations. As I mentioned to you, the existing house is FEMA non-compliant. We bring the new construction into FEMA compliance. We would also provide as I say, a code-compliant sanitary system. The proposed construction obviously meets all of the other zoning setbacks with the possible exception of the rear yard. And the final section of that memo has to do with the issue of precedent, which I think is also important. Melissa did my environmental consultant, not my daughter, did analysis as to the possibility of any other application like this coming before you. And the only other case which was remotely like this is the case involving property owned by the Burke family, which I think you may have seen a number of years ago. It appears from the record, though, that both of those lots are currently, there's a house lot and a vacant lot next to it. It appears that they're both in the same name, so they may have already merged. But even if you consider that as a similar situation, the vacant lot in the Burke case doesn't have any improvements, doesn't have a dock, doesn't have a walkway, and so forth. So we believe that this is, under the current circumstances, this is the only situation on the bay side of Meadow Lane that's like this. So that if you were to look kindly on it, I don't think you would be setting a precedent. And even if you did, it's probably not a bad precedent if you can get rid of the possibility of developing an additional lot. Even though this lot does have a fairly small upland area, there's always a possibility in the future that somebody might try to develop it. So that would take that off the table forever. Just for a point of particularity, the total reduction in lot coverage would amount to 792 square feet, 279 square feet on the house lot and 513 square feet on the adjacent lot, which currently has the walkway. On the landscape plan, there is an actual net square footage of proposed natural vegetation of 5,890 square feet. Now that's a pretty significant amount of square footage to put back into natural vegetation. We've also submitted a table showing the wetland setbacks that are existing and proposed, and you can see in a number of cases we're making those situations actually better. As far as the Meadow Lane Overlay District guidelines, and again the guidelines are concerned, as shown in the tables, the existing house in terms of gross floor area exceeds the guidelines, and the proposed would exceed the guidelines. However, the total increase in gross footage, if you will, is 678 square feet, which we would submit is not significant when one takes into account everything else we're doing. Less ground cover, more vegetation, sterilization, etc. So we think that really makes sense when you look at what the Meadow Lane Overlay District guidelines are trying to accomplish. And the other thing to note, as I say, because we're proposing a 2-story structure, that makes less ground impact possible. So to summarize, I would say that the benefits of this application are a reduction in lot coverage, the sterilization of a potential second building lot, and its allowance to revert to its natural condition. There'll be an increase in the natural vegetation on both sites, and the new building will be FEMA compliant, and it will have a conforming sanitary system. I would submit also that there would be minimal, if any, impact on any of the surrounding properties. Obviously on the north is Shinnecock Bay, to the west is the applicant's property, and to the east is a vacant parcel. So I would submit that there would be no negative impact on the neighbors as a result of the grant of this application. If you have any questions, I'm here, the architects are here, and the environmental consultant is here.
Anything, Chick?
We were asked to delineate the wetlands on this property prior to them designing this particular plan, and so they are reflected accurately on the plan. I was also called just for some preliminary input because it's an extremely sensitive site. I mean, basically what you have is a driveway that goes through wetlands, almost an island of an existing house. There is bulkheading and a boat slip, the pool, the sanitary system, as Gil mentioned, but it's completely surrounded by wetlands. So there are obviously concerns and challenges. So we did have some input, and in general, you know, I do feel that this is a dramatic improvement. I just really have a couple of minor questions. The existing sanitary system, my understanding is it's in this enclosed bulkheaded area.
Right here. It's right here, you're
Right.
exactly right.
And so it says, the notes on the landscape plan are that the bulkhead will be removed. Will,
No, not the bulkhead. The retaining wall there will be removed, but not the
Right.
bulkhead.
well, the retaining is.
The retaining wall around the septic,
Yeah,
existing septic.
yeah, I call it a bulkhead. It actually is a grade differential.
Yes, there is.
So, my concern is that once that is removed, that grade differential can slump. And I wasn't sure if that area would be, you know, the material would be removed behind the retaining wall so that replanting could take place. The concept is great, because you're proposing Spartina patens, other wetland vegetation or wetland fringe vegetation, but it's really what, you know, there's got to be rings or something as far as the sanitary structure and fill back there. What's going to happen with that?
We're planning on removing it. Actually, there's going to be, the whole motor court is being brought up so that the septic system will conform with the required groundwater separation, the bottom of the cesspool. So we can actually excavate that off. I believe we have it going back to grade 3.
Is that on the
Actually, it's
engineering
on,
plan?
no, but you know what? It's on the elevation. There was a building envelope, this was submitted actually yesterday. There are elevations given, and on the elevation, you can see the motor court drops off on both sides.
Right.
So that's
Okay.
will be brought back down.
So I think that needs to be notated somehow.
Okay.
That the grade will be adjusted to elevation 3 or comparable to the surrounding grade.
So we'll just completely remove that septic system then.
Yeah, there's no sense leaving it. It should be removed, and especially based on the plantings that you're proposing in that area. Also, because it's a very tight site, just the whole demolition process and the construction process, I think, really needs to be mapped out, possibly graphically, possibly narrative. I'll leave that up to you.
I had a question on it, you guys, because it's tight like that, you know, like lots of times they use like staked hay bales, and
Right.
maybe we need a little bit more rigid fence that, so
Yes.
the equipment and junk and stuff doesn't, it real filters in real easy, you know, to run off. It's
Also,
aggressive
Right on-
screening
right
of the wetlands, you
Yeah,
know?
Thank you.
right on my notes is erosion and sedimentation control, so that's perfect, Dan. And then I know there's a separate table submitted that has the wetland setbacks and the improvements.
Yes.
But usually just for future reference, we like to see the village wetland setbacks on the radius map or survey plan.
Wait, there is a notation right at the bottom.
Revised plan
Yeah,
has a
I
note.
looked twice and I didn't see it.
No, it's
so-
number 17. Because you really couldn't add the radius, it'd get really crazy.
Oh, okay. I missed it. I missed
If
it.
we put that, that would have driven you all nuts if we drove
Exactly.
these
No, that's
lines on
good.
there. You couldn't see anything.
That's good. There was one label on the plan that showed Spartina paintings, but it pointed to Northern Bayberry. If you look at the landscape plan. I think it was this right here. I'm not sure what that's referring to. I think you're
Which
talking about this hatched area, but this
So it's
arrow
a-
here.
The crazy line. Okay, I'll get rid of that crazy line. You just need the line down. That's
Yeah, I
it.
think it's misleading if you're
Not
gonna
a
give it to a
problem.
landscaper
Yep.
to install. And the only other thing is the area of the existing dock. Could you provide some provision, once that's removed, which I think is very good, it is a benefit, as you stated, to monitor it so that we don't have a potential for invasive species to come in
Well,
that area?
the one thing over here, it's all pretty much given over to Phragmites. I mean, we know, so this is gonna be really passive restoration. What we can do though is in this area here where the existing stone is impervious over there, we can come in with some bayberry, similar to what we're doing over there, but unfortunately,
It's already fragged.
It's already fragged.
Yeah. Yeah, I was hoping we could maybe get something, but maybe as you get closer to the bay, we'll get alternate flora.
You know what, once we remove it, I think it'll all take in, I mean, even over here, you've got the frag, but it goes over to to Spartina Payton's and everything on its own.
Mhm.
So I think it'll be okay here, but if you want me to add some active plantings there, that's fine.
That'd be good.
Okay.
That's all I had.
Do we want a bond like we usually do for the,
Probably would be a good idea in this case. We usually consider that at the time of the wetland special permit conditions. So knowing the comment, I was planning on including that in the conditions, assuming the board wants to move favorably on it.
Sounds reasonable. You've done it before. so it's reasonable.
Anything else from the board? Rick?
Just two quick questions. Number one, in terms of the sterilization, I think I would probably want to go with the merger route. So could you provide a copy of the deed of record for each parcel?
Mhm.
Then I'll have the existing ownership and I can cover the merger condition that way.
Yep.
The only other question I had was in terms of the Meadow Lane Overlay District guidelines. It's probably obvious because the house is a considerable distance from Meadow Lane, so I'm going to guess that it complies with the front yard, sky plane, and height guidelines.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yes, it
I can't imagine that it wouldn't, but if you could just give us the data on that.
It's actually proposed to be set back over 100 feet from the street. so
Yeah, I see
correct.
that, so it's obvious, but I like to have the data in
Okay.
the record.
How would you like it
Looks
on a
like a
survey,
graphic.
or how would you like it?
I don't care whether it's in a letter form or a table form or, I don't care, I just want the data there.
Okay,
So it doesn't look like we overlooked something.
fine.
Is there anyone out in the audience who'd like to refer to this application? I assume we're gonna hold this open for all purposes?
Yeah, there's some additional information we received.
I move that we hold this open for all purposes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Have a nice weekend, everybody.
Okay, Gil. On the application of case number 2819, 450 Gin Lane LLC, 450 Gin Lane.
Thank you. For the applicant, John Bennett, Bennett and Mead, Melissa Dedovich from Peconic Environmental is with me this evening. Grayson Jordan and Rebecca Costanza from the Project Architect's Office, Blaise McLeod, and last but certainly not least, Ian Hambeck from Chris LaGuardia, Landscape Architect. We are proposing to redevelop 450 Gin Lane, which is an oceanfront parcel. And it's currently, there's a rather dilapidated house there. We do have a certificate of appropriateness and a demolition permit in order to remove that. And also there are some non-conforming accessory structures in the front yard, but they're all certificated as CO number 12076 is included in the application. So what our proposal is to essentially remove all the existing structures with the exception of this elevated beach cabana for obvious reasons. Obviously, want to preserve that. But we think that the proposed redevelopment is a superior use of the property. We'll be getting rid of some nonconformities, and although we're asking for relief, ultimately we think we're bringing it more into conformity with the various code and wetland setbacks. Just a little bit about the relief. What we're asking for is a dune crest relief from 100 feet to 77.4 feet nothing to do with the actual habitable structure or anything like that, but solely to construct a new wastewater system that conforms, of course, with the health department standards. Although we need some relief, a couple of things to note about that request. First, we're behind, significantly behind the coastal erosion hazard area line, which is the other regulatory line which seeks to protect from negative effects from on the dunes and erosion. And also, although we want this, would request this relief for the wastewater system to 77.4 feet, there's currently an existing sanitary system for that cabana, which is located at 47.8 feet from the crest of the dune. We're going to take that wastewater from the cabana and put it into the more than adequate system which has been proposed. So even though we need a little help or due request for the proposed septic system, we're going to do away with a much more less conforming sanitary system. And why do we need this dune crest relief? Because we're trying, in terms of balancing what are the most fragile, we're trying to keep it out as much as possible from your 200-foot septic wastewater setback from Old Town Pond. So that's as it relates to the dune crest request for relief. Everything else of the proposal complies. The dune crest setback. Then, in terms of the wetland setback requests, 179 feet from the required 200-foot setback for the sanitary system, and that's only for the, correct me if I'm wrong, Melissa, that's only for the expansion rings. So that's, again, we've tried to minimize as much as possible the request for relief. Again, that's only for the expansion rings. But again, the existing system is at 156.9 feet, so even though we need a little bit of help there, we're increasing the degree of conformity of the sanitary system. And then 137.5 as opposed to the 150-foot structural setback for some portions of the house, steps and a walkway, fairly minimal intrusions, and 125 feet for some clearing and grading. But again, what are we doing away with? There's a significant concrete driveway and parking area in the front of the house, which will be removed, and a new landscaping plan and pervious parking and access ways implemented. And then from both a zoning and a wetland setback point of view, we have a what do we have there? We have a greenhouse and a couple of sheds that not only don't conform with the wetland setback, but they also don't conform with the with both the zoning setback, but also the prohibition against accessory structures in the front yard. Then again, also in terms going back to the wetlands request for relief, we're asking for help on some of the wetland setbacks, but you do have in between Old Town Pond and the site, you have a 50-foot wide village right-of-way, which appears to be approved and paved in about 35 feet. So you have, I know the village doesn't consider that a jurisdictional stop, which is why we're here for wetlands relief, but the DEC does for tidal, although not for freshwater, although we meet the DEC setbacks because we're more than 100 feet. The other thing to note, and I'm sort of playing a sort of an armchair groundwater hydrologist with this, but I think it's fairly common knowledge that the prevalent groundwater flow from Old Town Pond would be to the south, outward, so towards the water. So that should be taken into account in regarding the request for relief for the sanitary system. You're not going to have the prevalent groundwater flow pushing wastewater into Old Town Pond. So that's that. Those are the request for relief and our explanation and our rationale why we would require that relief. And we think that the relief also, although we're asking for relief, it decreases these nonconformities. We've also submitted a landscape plan and a staging plan for construction and a site plan. I know Melissa has some elements that she wanted to go over, and both Melissa and Ian are here to answer any questions regarding the parking plan, the construction methodology, and the landscape plan. We can either, unless you want to, did you have something to say, or should we wait until Chick, did you have comments, or the board, or?
Want me to go through? From my standpoint and my recommendation to the board, I don't have any problem with the sanitary setback. That seems reasonable. We have looked to have the expansion pools situated so that if there is an expansion, that would be the only part, and everything else is beyond the 200 feet. The structure is set back a little bit more than the existing structure on the property. It's larger, but the relief there does not seem unreasonable. It does seem like there's more fill and more activity, driveway, parking, and so forth within the 125-foot setback that many other applications, this board has looked to minimize that, to try and reduce that parking area, driveway area if possible, and reduce the fill. So that's something we may want to look at, alternative configurations. We did discuss that at work session, and it was one of the items that we had some concerns about.
Actually, can I just ask one question about that? One of the things that John didn't bring up and that I actually brought is, I don't know if you noticed, between the brick driveway, the retaining wall, the shed and greenhouse.
Talking about
concrete driveway-
existing?
Yeah, there's actually about 2,458 square feet of impervious surface within a 150-foot setback that's being removed. I'm
Referring to the concrete driveway
the
on the
concrete
survey?
driveway, and so actually
From the as-built
it's
survey.
from the as-built, yeah.
Of
So
existing conditions.
Yeah.
I can actually hand this up to the board too. Thank you.
I could be a little more specific, and you can just kind of react and let us know if it's doable.
Oh, no, and I understand about the fill, it's actually, we probably can work something out, but I think it's very important to note that it is a dramatic decrease. And the second page of that attachment is actually how much impervious surface is going to now be within the 150-foot setback. So it's a dramatic drop. We really tried to take, and those are all legal structures, and really try to pull it back into the building envelope. But we can definitely.
It's helpful. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we had looked at was to see if it's possible, we'd actually move the driveway farther north and shift the parking to the south side. It seemed as though that expanded area in front of the house, we weren't sure what the purpose of that was.
Which, actually, if you could point that out to Ian and I, that would be really helpful.
Do we lay these right up here?
To basically move the driveway so that these stalls are 20 feet deep and flip this, so that, you know, we weren't sure what the purpose of this was. It was going right up to the house, and you really can't park in there, it's not deep enough. So that was one of the thoughts of a way to reduce fill, reduce that
So
active area where cars and driveway would be,
So
and pull it
flip the
farther to
parking-
the south.
flip the parking to the south.
Right.
Okay, all right.
Well, just one thing to know, I mean, we're looking at minimum turning radiuses and the comfort of actually pulling into those spaces. So I wonder, to the interest of reducing fill, if we were to maintain this, but potentially introduce, you know, in this area, introduce some sort of a step feature that lowered the parking area but got you up to the elevation of that walkway, that would get the fill down. Would that be something that you would favor?
I think it was a combination of the fill as well as just, you know, driveway surface area. Even though it's pervious, it's an active area. There's, you know, that area, that 125 foot is supposed to be as much natural vegetation as possible.
I understand.
So we'd like to see you explore options that would try and get it closer to what, you know, something less.
Minimize the parking court.
It looks like right now you got provisions for like 12 parking places, you know, which, and I don't know, how many bedroom house is it?
Seven?
Seven.
Seven. That's,
Which would be what?
Six spaces.
Six spaces, so you've got double the amount of parking that you need. And
okay, let's take a look at that. I got it.
We can
Yeah.
represent that.
Yeah.
Was the board okay with what we talked about?
Yeah.
And then the other ones were more details, having to do with the drainage plan and the landscape plan. We did notice just a calculation on watershed one. The cubic footage adds up to, total required should be 554 instead of 545.
So there's a typo there.
Drainage area one.
Okay.
And the runoff coefficient for watershed area 5, you're calling it out as southern lawn area, but you have an impervious coefficient. So I think that probably is pervious, and it's probably going to be a 0.2 coefficient there.
Yep, you're right, so that's gonna reduce that quantity.
And then the landscape plan, you may want to work with Melissa on some of the species. There were actually two that are on the Suffolk County invasive species list, the maidenhair grass and Chanticleer pear. And there are a couple that are non-natives that we'd recommend replacements. That would be the green beauty boxwood, the Hamelin fountain grass, and red fescue meadow.
One more time.
I can give you the.
Oh, perfect, thank you.
You said the fescue was non-native?
That particular one, the red fescue meadow. And then there's a fescue, I think it was the 30 by 60 area that's called out as fescue lawn panel.
Mm-hmm.
We just want to make sure that that's not fertilized, and, you know, if that could be planted with native vegetation, that's, you know, that would do it.
Okay, just, can I double back? I thought there was a previous application with Ed Hollander that he had proposed a red fescue sod as a native.
Yeah, and is that what's proposed here?
Yeah, Stuca rubra.
Yeah, I'm still looking at the specs on that red fescue sod.
Okay.
Just to make sure that it's native. If that's what's proposed here and it's consistent, we can consider it.
Okay, so we'll take a look at that as well. All right, thank you.
So here's, just so you don't have to take all those notes.
Thanks, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Chief.
And for the board.
We'll take a look at that parking lot. Oh, yeah, sure. Oh, yeah. Take a look at that parking lot and the species, and see if we can minimize the parking lot, maybe take some fill away.
If we need to, in order to get at the 125, would a minimal retaining wall, like less than 4 feet, would the board be okay with that, even though it's a structure, that might be the easier way to fill out of that area? I'm just trying to give options in case you have that question.
I think from my standpoint, that could work fairly well. A low retaining wall that would get the grade down a little bit, replant that, kind of screen the wall with native plantings, maybe some native shrubs.
I just want to give as many options to Ian as possible.
Sure.
Absolutely.
That's all I had.
Anything else from the board? Yep. Anybody out in the audience like to hear this application? Yeah, please come up and tell us who you are and
My name's Neil Smith. I own the property directly to the east of this, 466 Gin Lane. And my observations, and they're only really those, are just from a neighbour's point of view. I don't have the expertise that all of you have in doing this. I'm particularly impressed that your own experts actually know the landscape and what's native more than the experts do in the audience, and I think it's terrific that you protect the villagers like that. But my only concerns were to do with observations, really, to do with groundwater. But I suspect that the Department of Health and your own folks will do whatever is necessary in that regard. The other observations I have probably don't refer to this committee, probably a different committee, in terms of architecture. One would hope that the architecture conforms with the area there. I mean, there aren't any contemporary structures within about half a mile, I suspect, of that particular location, but just looking at the architect's website sort of worries me just a little bit. I'm hoping that it will conform with the pyramid law, again, probably for the Architectural Review Board, not for this board. And also, probably something that I would share with my new neighbour is the time frame. I would hope that we're able to complete whatever we can before next summer, obviously, for obvious reasons. But all in all, you know, as the next door neighbour, this seemed pretty reasonable to me. I didn't see any major problems that from a neighbour's perspective, obviously not from an expert's perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who'd like to be heard? So we have some work to do with this, right? So we're going to hold it open.
I move that we hold this open.
In favor? Aye.
Aye.
While the room's clearing out, no more wetlands on today.
Are you kidding? I'm not kidding. We gotta start to save these for last.
Actually, I appreciate the way the agenda was put together tonight.
You have an influence over there with the building department that we don't have?
I think so. Thanks, and have a good night.
All right, Chick, good night. Thank you for your observations.
It looks like
They're getting groundwater?
It looks like they're getting close. Which might be okay, I just don't know.
Yeah.
You know, it's
What we're gonna do is take the last three cases as one. We assume they're gonna be some repetition here, so rather than repeat them 3 times, let's repeat them once. So, we've got 2820, 2821, 2822, Old Town Development LLC, 6 Old Town Lane, number 7 Old Town Lane, and number 9 Old Town Lane. Do you have the affidavits?
Oh, we're gonna
read the
Good evening. My name is Frank Eisler. I'm a member of the firm of Smith Finkelstein, Eisler, and Yakubowski in Riverhead, New York. I represent the applicant here tonight on all 3 of the applications. We have prepared for the convenience of the board reduced plans for each of the lots that might be easier for you to handle. If you'd like, we can hand those up now. Do you want all 3 sets or just like lot 6 first?
They should give us all 3 at once.
Okay.
You can look at them side by side. These are things that are not already inside our package, right?
These are what's in your package, but shrunk.
Smaller, okay. That's
Just to
better.
make it easier
Then we can open them up, yeah.
I'll just pass them out.
yeah, it'd be-
One is for the file, will have to be stamped.
Okay, I'll give her a separate.
This is for you.
Has mine been given out? Yeah.
File.
This is for lot 9.
Thank you. Thank you. One of us.
Oh, we now have three.
We got stamp,
Two.
stamp, and stamp.
I have two.
I'm getting the third one now, I guess. This is all filed. There's only lot 9 coming up, right?
This should be lot 9. As I'm sure the board will remember, I was here before the board a couple of years ago for similar variance relief for Lot 8. At that time, after, the hearing, the board granted our requested variance, and the history of it, of the Lot 8 variance, is going to be the same as these three that we're here before you tonight. The Old Town subdivision, as you know, is on Wickapocket Old Town. It went through extensive environmental and planning review before the planning board and got ultimately final approvals in 2007.
Just 1 second. About the audio, is that coming through over there? It is? Okay, fine.
I'm finding an allergy, so I apologize. And as you may recall, when we were coming to start development of lot number 8 back several years ago, the development plan needed to be looked at a little bit more in terms of the architectural approvals and variances that the planning board had granted us as part of the original site plan approval. Initially, we went to the planning board thinking that because they had the cluster jurisdiction and the local law jurisdiction over the application, that they should be the board that would determine whether the variances we were asking for Lot 8, which are the same in terms of the height of the pool building, the area of the accessory structures, and the breezeway relief that we're asking for one of the lots here. We actually went to about 2 hearings before the planning board for Lot 8, and then it was determined that this board really had jurisdiction over it. So the planning board, I believe, submitted a letter to this board advocating that the relief be granted for Lot 8 because the increase for height of the accessory buildings, the increase of the square footage of the accessory buildings, and the relief for the variance to allow the 2 structures, the garage and the main house, to be connected with a breezeway and be considered one main building, was consistent with their approvals for Old Town. As you know, Old Town is a development that has 7 oversized lots. It has its own very unique environment. As this board found when deciding and granting the relief for Lot 8, I can't say it better than the board did. This subdivision is a unique subdivision, being a cluster subdivision and a reduced density subdivision with several oversized lots, which was approved by the planning board pursuant to a local law enacted by the Board of Trustees, authorizing the planning board to modify specified dimensional regulations and to modify other dimensional regulations simultaneously with the subdivision approval, which has been subject to numerous conditions imposed by the planning board, including stringent architectural design guidelines. And as part of our approval at the subdivision level with the planning board, as a part of our conditional approval, were very, very detailed, hundreds of pages. I believe we even handed them in when we were here 2 years ago, of architectural design guidelines so that the houses, the homes that are built on this subdivision capture the architecture and the grand size of the estate housing of the 1920s that this village is well known for. And the whole development was geared for that kind of vision. And as the planning board advised this board when we were dealing with the same variance for Lot 8, the relief we're asking is appropriate for this scope and size development, and this point is applicable to each of the 3 lots, really.
Now, specifically, in Lot 6, we're asking for the pool house height to be granted to up to 24 feet, and a pool house area of 893 feet. The code requires 800 square feet for accessory buildings on lots of 20,000 square feet or more, and these lots are all in the 4-acre size capacity. The variances that we're asking for the pool house are similar to the one for the garage. We're asking for a total area of 842 square feet and a height of 25 feet. These are consistent with the grants this board gave to Lot 8. The height for the accessory structure on Lot 8 was 25 feet, and the square footage of what was the pool house on Lot 8, the actual requirement of the village, which I said was 800 square feet, the actual structure as the village measured it was 1,500 square feet because of the roof line. And the board approved that variance as long as the construction of the actual enclosed area of the pool remained at 800, which was the plan that we had put before the board. So that was a much more substantial variance in terms of the square footage than we're asking for in this case, both for Lot 6, 7, and 8. As you'll see from the plans, for Lot 6, the pool house is interior on the parcel. It's the furthest, it's more the southerly boundary line, furthest away from Wickapog. As you know, if you've, I'm sure, driven down Wickapog, between the tree lining of the mature tree lines along the property, plus the hedge lines behind it, the property is substantially screened. And what is true for all the lots is the requirements the planning board imposed on us and that we voluntarily accepted were every lot on our parcel has to be hedged internally between 10 and 14 feet on the internal property lines, so that the impacts on the interior lots adjacent here will be minimal at best in terms of there's very little visual impact for the variances that we're requesting for actually all 3 of these lots. The Lot 7 variance that we're asking for are, with respect to the pool house, virtually the same as we're asking for Lot 6. We're asking for an area variance of approximately 10% variance of the code requirement. We're asking for a square footage of 880 square feet and a height of 24. Again, when you look at the scale of the properties and the architectural design of the buildings and the proportions and relationship of the accessory structures to the main building, the larger size, both in terms of height and area, are warranted to capture the architectural design and flow that is the underlying intent of this entire development. On Lot 7, we're also requesting the similar relief that was requested for Lot 8, and that's to connect the garage to the house with an open breezeway rather than an enclosed breezeway, and with the intent that the garage is considered part of the main house. This was the same request for Lot 8, which was granted, and from an architectural vision of the property, that breezeway, open breezeway, is the design of the time that we're trying to capture here, as was the case with Lot 8. Unlike Lot 8, the proposed breezeway here does not need any variance relief with respect to the width ratio to the length. Our proposed width of our breezeway is far in excess of 50% of the length. So Lot 8, we asked for a variance that we only have to go 45% of the width. We're not, that's unnecessary here, so we're not seeking that remedy or relief from the code for that item. On Lot 9, and we've been in discussion with a neighbor, and Mr. Bregman is here representing the neighbor on, with respect to the application for Lot 9. And we have agreed with the neighbor to amend our application. We were seeking a 24-foot height for the pool house, and in discussions with the applicant, with the neighbor, I'm sorry, the applicant is willing to amend the application that the height of the pool house not exceed 21.5 feet. And the area, I don't believe there was any objection from the neighboring owner with respect to the square footage of the pool house, which we're asking for 842 square feet. I know you've been hearing a lot of things tonight and it's getting late, but if you'd like, I can go into much more detail why these applications meet the criteria of the village law requirements of section 7-712B3 in terms of the balancing tests that you are required to go through in considering this application or these applications. I think that if you look at the decision that you rendered in Lot 8, you will find that the circumstances are very, very similar. The nature of these lots are all this, similar in respect to their size and location and the very severe restrictions and architectural designs that we're under. I have Mr. Keene here today, who is the developer of these 3 lots. If you have any questions of him, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer any of your questions. If you'd like, I can stop talking now or go into more detail. If you have any questions of me, I'd be happy to answer
I
them.
could just recap about the garages. On Lot 6, the garage will be detached. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Lot 7, it'll be connected by a breezeway.
That's correct.
And Lot 9, the garage is attached.
It's attached, yes. We're not asking for any relief on Lot 9 with respect to the garage, just the pool house. And as you indicated, it's attached. It's part of the main building. And 7, it will become part of the main building for your, for zoning purposes, if you grant our request of relief, as was done with lot number 8. And as you indicated, Lot 6 has a detached garage. And we just think that, and we've detailed in our submittal to the board the explanations and underlying rationale for the variances in detail. And certainly for lots 6 and 7, the impacts off-site are hard to imagine really being of any magnitude whatsoever due to the existing screening and the setbacks of these properties from Wickapog Road and the properties that would be across the street there. Does the board have any other questions of me?
Could I just ask a couple?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, just to clarify a couple of things, okay. Number 1, on Lot 9, your amended height request is not to exceed what?
21.5 feet.
21.5 feet. Okay, and the only other thing I wanted to clarify is, you've seen the public hearing notice?
Yes, I did.
Are these figures you're looking for? In some cases, the application said not to exceed something.
Well,
And I presume that these are numbers that the building department office took off the plans or something.
that's correct. Those are I checked with the plans that we submitted, and those, you're correct, the building department.
Okay, the numbers are accurate then, that's in the public hearing notice.
Right, our request, our actual application was, as you indicated, we had a height not to exceed that was a slightly higher number.
Right, the reason I'm asking this is we can't go
I
beyond
understand that.
what's in the public hearing notice.
Right.
So I wanted to make sure that those figures are accurate, from your point of view.
That they
Because
match.
otherwise you'd have to start over again and have it re-advertised.
No, we understand that. And of course, as you indicated, Lot 9, that's been reduced here.
Okay. I just have one other question. You don't have to repeat everything that you've written out in your application. The board has
Yes.
got them at the work session, and I'm sure they've read it. if the board has any questions on the plans, that would be something else. From my point of view, just had one other question or comment. When we dealt with Lot H back in March of 2012, you had obtained approval from the Board of Architecture Review and Historic Preservation before we acted. I'm wondering where you are with that board. And the reason I ask is that the kinds of variances that you're asking for are the kinds of variances that, in general, the board does not typically grant. It was granted in relation to Lot 8, based on the arguments that you presented, and also the fact that you had architecture review approval and a planning board recommendation. We understand you're not going to get a planning board recommendation anymore because they thought they had jurisdiction the last time.
We would be,
But we don't normally make architectural judgments, and so, and your main argument for asking for the variance is the unique circumstances of this subdivision and the overall architectural design guidelines for the subdivision, which is not really a matter in our jurisdiction, and I'm not sure it would be appropriate for this board to act without something from the Board of Architecture Review.
if the board would consider, we would ask that you could condition your action here on our obtaining that approval from the ARB. I believe we're,
I don't think you're hearing me.
I'm hearing you.
We don't even have to condition it. Obviously,
Right.
if we grant the variances, you still have to get their approval.
Right, and just,
But if the argument for getting the variances is based on architectural stuff, which it is, I think this board would be much more comfortable if you had architecture review board approval for the design before this board acted.
One of the.
And you had it the last time.
If I might ask the board to consider, on Lot 9, which you may know is under full construction, if the board would consider conditioning an approval on ARB approval for that application with the agreement we have reached with the neighbor, and if you'd like us to come back here after we get ARB approval for these variances for 6 and 7, that would be a substantial assistance to us, because we're in the middle of construction on Lot 9. If the board would consider
If you
that.
already started to construct, you must have already gone to the ARB.
We have ARB approval for the building and for a pool
The
that
house.
was, and for a pool house that was, that conformed with zoning,
So you had to go back to them to get approval for the pool house.
just for the pool house. The house,
The one where the garage is attached and doesn't
that's
come into
correct.
consideration.
So the original pool house was smaller
Yes.
and lower.
Correct. And
Okay.
when we started construction and started revisiting it, and then I believe the realization that Lot 8 had gotten relief, it was apparent. That's why the application was made at this point, and we're hoping to get the relief for Lot 9 as quickly as possible so that we know we have to go to the ARB for approval for the pool house.
Yeah, but you still can't construct it until you go before the ARB anyway, right?
Right.
No, that's correct. If I could speak, I'm John Keane, the developer. The foundation is already in as per the original plan, and this pool house is virtually the same size. It's just, minor increase, and it's just taller, because we found that the roof line was not really very appealing on the first one, as it could be, had we had the opportunity to do this.
But what you're admitting is that you can construct a conforming pool house,
You can build it.
which we all know you can.
Right, and that's why I'm here.
And your only argument for getting a variance is based on all of this architectural stuff.
Well, a little bit of both. I mean, I think it's partially because the lots allow larger structures, and the lots.
Yeah, but we have lots of large lots in the village, and we don't grant these kinds of variances.
Well,
So,
I would, we did go to the village and ask what we should do, and they said that we needed to come here and get approval before we went to architecture review, and they've actually got us on the agenda for the Architecture Review Board, assuming we got through this. But we were told we couldn't go to them until we went to you and got the approval.
Yeah.
So we're,
Well, if this board requests that you get that approval first,
obviously the board can
it's
do
up to,
whatever.
it's up to
Yeah,
the board.
I
I'm just
understand.
making a suggestion.
I would only ask that the board, if it's possible to get it subject to us getting an approval from the Architecture Review Board, which we have obviously every intention of going to, it would help tremendously given the stage of construction that we're at on this project right now. So
If we grant it, and then you go there, you're gonna tell them, well, the ZBA has already signed off on this, it kind of puts them in the spot.
Well, I think we would,
You're gonna overrule us, you know?
no, I think we would make it, and I think you would make it clear in your decision that it's conditioned on their independent approval of the architectural design. And that you're granting this variance is only if they agree with the arguments we're making about the architecture. It's, which comes first? We need both approvals. And if this board doesn't have a substantial issue with the relief we're asking, you're not compelled, your decision doesn't compel the Architectural Review Board to not act independently.
In any other area in the village, the board would have a significant problem.
Right, I understand
What
that.
you're requesting.
Right.
I don't know if we've ever granted a height variance to 24 feet or 25 feet for an
Well,
accessory.
there's a lot of square footage relief they want to. What's the conforming square footage? 600?
800, and we're asking at 843.
Oh, okay.
We're
All right.
43
I-
square.
I mean,
It's the height that's.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The height's the thing, yeah.
Right. And that was approved, obviously, on lot number 8. Again, I'm happy to go to the Architecture Review Board and explain that by no means is this board giving a definitive answer on the architecture. It's up to their discretion on that. This was strictly for the variance of height and size, and that it's we can make it as clear as possible that we're not looking for one board to say we don't want to.
It's up to the board. You have my recommendation.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess
I
as a
think you
very,
would have made things a lot easier for everybody if you had gone to the ARB first.
Well, again, I just want you to know, we did ask that.
Well, you
And-
did it the
and-
last time.
No, that wasn't me.
But it was Frank.
But Frank got brought in, this
Okay,
process.
it's not our problem.
I know, but we did go to
How
the
you
village
got
and
here.
ask them, this is the situation we're in.
Are you hearing what we're saying? That you don't have any grounds for this variance other than the unique
Architectural.
history of this subdivision and the architectural argument that the height that you're looking for is more architecturally appropriate.
we clearly.
Absent that, you have zero argument for a variance,
No.
and you're asking the board to grant the variance with no argument for it, without the ARB approval first. So,
Well, I don't disagree with anything you've said. The only practical point I'm asking the board to consider is it will save us a month or two of process. If we go to the ARB first, before you make a decision and don't grant a conditional approval now, we're gonna have to come back to you again. And if we're armed with the ARB approval, it sounds like this would be a favorably considered variance under our very unique circumstances.
Not necessarily all the way yet. I'm
not saying-
I'm still on the fence about this additional height, so.
Okay. Well, and if you are with that, I can go into more detail for you as to why these variances in these unique circumstances are not anything but a de minimis request. But we just have a practical situation, particularly with Lot 9, and we have reduced our request for the height for Lot 9 in conjunction with our discussions with Mr. Bregman.
This house, this been sold, or is this a spec house?
It's under construction. It
It's
won't,
a spec house.
and it won't go on the market until it's,
Complete, yeah.
it's a
Yeah, and
done
we're
deal.
trying as much as, we're pushing as hard as we can through a very, very cold winter to get that house up so that got something to show in the market. I mean, this is, as you know, been a project that's been stagnant for many, many, many years, and we're trying to really put our best foot forward. And we spent a lot of time redoing this because we felt it was the right thing to do. And I stopped, as I said, the foundation's already in. We stopped the construction to try to do this the right way. And so I would ask if it's possible, at least on Lot 9, so we can keep moving, and then I'll go to the
The
architecture. review
problem
board.
is, I'd probably want to see the plans for the one that you have now versus the one that's 21.9 to get sort of a comparison of how much you're asking for here.
Well, you're asking from 16 feet to 21 and a half at this point.
5.5 feet.
5.5 feet, and it really is just, it's aesthetically, when you look at the two.
At the moment, we don't have plans for the 21.5.
Right, you just have the agreement with
You're
us.
gonna have to give us revised plans anyhow.
Actually, no, that plan is.
21.3. Are you looking for a decision tonight?
We were hoping for Lot 9.
You're not getting a decision tonight. This is the kind of thing that would have to be written up like the last one was. So,
Now,
Just to also answer the question while we're here, on the height issue on Lot 9 particularly, if you look at the site plan for Lot 9,
it says 21.5 on it, doesn't it?
oh, it's already been,
Yeah.
is that on this plan?
It says
Oh.
21.5.
Oh, so you have plans there?
Yeah.
21.3 here.
So we have the plans for the 21.5.
Oh, I thought you said these were the same as, I thought
That
you
was
said what you
my-
handed up was the same as what you would file, only
That was-
shrunken in size.
That was my understanding. So
I think
Lot
that's
9,
not correct.
It says 21.5, right?
I'll just take them 4 feet off to see what it looks like.
Here.
yeah, okay. But this is not what we submitted?
Yeah, that's what they have.
Oh, this is what they do have? Rick, these are plans that were filed, it was my mistake. I was under the impression these were changed. I didn't realize that this was already on the plans. These were filed with the planning board, with the zoning board.
Inferior.
So the plans
I
didn't
think
show 24 feet, they showed 21.5?
It says
Filed for
21.5,
24 feet, we have it reduced to 21 and a half.
which is what this shows.
Which shows?
This one's that they handed up.
Oh, tonight, so these are revised. That's what I'm trying to find out. Are these revised from what you filed?
They're the same, but the building department wrote down on the application it was a 24-foot height.
No, those were, I think the plans that were originally submitted showed 24 feet.
They just changed the
That's what
number,
they're
they
basing it
redraw it to the scale. In other words, they just scale out the.
I don't know what scale. It's marked 21.5.
I know, but did they just change that from 24 and not sure to change the drawing?
I don't know. We'd have to scale it out.
Yeah.
No, it's to scale.
This is to scale.
Relax.
Personally, speaking for myself, I feel a lot better if we went to the ARB first.
Can I just make one point, really directed to the concern you had? If you look at the setback from the property line of the pool house on Lot 9, it's 160 feet from the property line. There's, as you may know, behind our property to the south, there's a 15-foot easement that was dedicated to the village when we got the subdivision approval. And the properties behind us would be set back, whatever their
No,
setbacks are.
I understand, you're saying you got a big lot, so you could have a taller building because the big lot can support the taller building. But we got a whole village full of big lots with conforming size pool houses. So you're asking now to go, all right, all those other ones don't count, we want different special rules for us. This is something new for us to consider, it's a path we haven't been down before,
Well,
so.
It sounds like maybe the best thing for us to do is to go to the ARB first and get their feedback on the design. And I think you'll find that, as this board found a couple of years ago, this is a very unique thing that will not reverberate into other areas of the village. But perhaps we'll just, adjourn this then to the next meeting and see if we can get to the ARB between then and now.
We have someone out in the audience who'd like to be heard, I think. Mr. Bregman, do you want to be heard?
Hi, good evening. Eric Bregman, Farrell Fritz, 50 Station Road. I represent Mr. and Mrs. Minskoff, who each own a lot next to each other, immediately behind Lot 9 in the Old Town subdivision. and Mr. Capasso through an LLC who owns the lot immediately to the west of the Minskoff lots. So it's basically the 3 lots that are behind Lot 9, that is south of Lot 9. My clients were concerned about the height. The height's the thing, as Rick said. Given the relationship, distances, et cetera, they are, and based on discussions we had, if the height is reduced to 21.5, or actually 21 feet 3 inches, as on the plans now, they have no objections and would support the application. Of course, if the ARB agrees that it works architecturally. I had a lot to say in opposition, but some of which Rick stole, but we are, would not be, suffer any detriment if it was reduced to 21 feet 3 inches.
0.5 or 3 inches? What should we be talking about here?
Well, we talked about 21.5, but they've already designed it at 21.3, so if they go through with their 21 feet 3 inches, so if...
Is it 21.3 or 21.5? I don't know which one.
In order to see that, I'd need a magnifying glass.
Yeah.
Is that a 5 or a 3?
I'm pretty sure
I
it's
thought it was a
3.
5, but
I can hear.
it looks like a 21.3, but
Yeah.
either way, I'm happy.
We're talking about
21.3,
2 inches here. I don't think it matters.
We can see the difference on that, 162 feet away.
Right.
Happy with either one.
Well, we need to clarify what the request is for
It's
us.
whatever's on the plan, and we have the reduced set here, but you've got the large set which will show it. Here, we have it here.
It's just that the print is small.
21.3,
21.3.
21 feet, 3 inches.
3 inches.
0.3 is not the same as 3
Right,
inches.
you're right, 21 feet, 3 inches.
21 feet 3 inches, so that's 0.25.
Thank you.
I didn't teach
21
math for 30 years for nothing.
21 feet 3 inches?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience? No, there is nobody else in the audience at all. So what we're going to do is just hold this open, right?
Yep.
I move that we hold this open.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And this meeting of the Southampton Village Zoning Board of Appeals for the month of May 2014 is closed.